This video is all about research methodology in short. First of all, we need to know what is the definition of research. So, research is defined as a scientific and systemic investigation for knowledge on a particular topic. So, the research is always scientific and systemic search for knowledge on a particular topic. Next is your classification of research. The first classification is the basic research and applied research. Whereas the basic research is based on the fundamental principles. Next is your applied research is always based on the practical applications of knowledge or practical applications of fundamental principles is always based on the problem solving research. So this is always a time bound studies. There is certain time to complete the applied research, whereas the basic research doesn't require any time constraint. So basic research and applied research. Another classification is your qualitative research and quantitative research. The qualitative research includes the variables like your behavior study or the opinions of people or the attitudes of people. These are all the qualitative research where we cannot measure in numbers. So these are all kind of case studies. On the other side, the quantitative research is always a quantified measures where we can state as a number. The quantified measures are included under the quantitative research. These are all kind of clinical research. So the clinical research is as always quantitative or case studies are always qualitative in nature. Another classification is your observational research and experimental research. The observational research is always field research or non-experimental in nature. This includes all kind of survey studies where we do observe the variables. These are all the observational research. On the other side, the experimental research is always based on the modifying the variables. Here, the variables are modified by giving any kind of intervention. We do intervene. So this is also known as interventional studies or interventional research. This is all kind of clinical studies or RCTs. These are all experimental research where we do modify the variables by doing certain intervention. In observational research, these are all non-experimental in nature. Next comes your research process. For research process, we have certain steps to complete the research. The researchers first of all need the selection of topic. The topic selection is the most vital point. For the selection of topic, there is one criteria that is known as Finer criteria. It includes the 5 components like feasibility, interest, noble, ethical, and relevance. So these 5 components need to be taken care of before the selection of topic. The topic must be feasible. The researcher must have some interest on the topic. It must be noble. Certain new things must be needed. It must be ethical and relevance. It must be relevance. So these 5 components need to be taken care of before the selection of topic. After the topic selection, there is another part that is the review part. For review, what studies has already been done or what is yet to be done, these are all included under the review. The research gaps in between that need to be reviewed by 3 steps, that is by 3 sources, that is primary sources or the secondary sources or the tertiary sources. The primary sources includes the studies that has already been completed like the thesis work or the dissertation work or the books published on that topic. These are under the primary sources. Whereas the secondary sources includes the review kind of articles or the meta-analysis studies. These are all the secondary sources. Whereas the tertiary sources, those are published in a newspaper or in a encyclopedia or dictionary, etc. These are all the tertiary kind of sources need to be reviewed under the topic. After the review, the researcher needs to state the hypothesis. The hypothesis is a statement that should be logical. The logical statement or the logical supposition under the topic is known as hypothesis, or it can be known as a reasonable prediction. The reasonable prediction that is going to be achieved at the end of the research studies is known as the hypothesis. After stating hypothesis, aims and objective must be mentioned. The aims is always one statement that is a clear and concise statement. The aims is always the researchers hopes to achieve at the end. The end product of the studies is known as the aim. Whereas the objectives are the researcher is intended to achieve those aims or the pathways. Those pathways need to achieve the aims is known as objective. To state the aim and objective, there is one criteria that is known as SMART criteria. The SMART criteria includes the 5 components like your specific, the aim and objective must be specific, or it must be measurable, it must be attainable and reliable and time bound. These components need to be taken care of before stating your aims and objective. Next comes your materials and methods. What kind of materials, what kind of sources, what kind of equipments or the statistical methods need to be done under the studies that to be mentioned. The materials and methods need all the kind of equipment, sources, the method of data collections or the statistical methods. Those include under the research studies is mentioned under the materials and methods. After stating the materials, we need to state the data, the systemic data collection. That comes your observational and research part. The systemic data collection, which can be expressed in terms of tables or text or figures or any kind of methods, that comes your observation and results. After observation and result, you need to publish your data. You need to communicate your data or you need to state your data at the end of your research studies in terms of thesis or dissertation work or any kind of journal. These are all the method of communication after completion of research studies. So the research process includes 7 steps. First is your selection of topic, then the review part, then hypothesis, aim and objectives, then material and methods, then observation and result about all the data. So after collection of data, then you need to communicate your data about the research topic. These are all the research process.